Most because of all the talking.
Welcome to our expert panel here at Formnext 2023. Welcome to the panel Emerging Technologies. Yeah, we already heard a lot about pharmaceuticals, about bioprinting this morning, and medicine, and very interesting questions coming from you, from the audience. And now we are starting in our panel discussion, and I'm really happy to have the experts here at stage. I'm very happy to have you here, Kety Sindze. You are Managing Director of 3D Adapt Media, and you have a very broad knowledge about the industrial market worldwide. And so we are very curious, and there are a lot of questions for you. What AM is developing and doing internationally. Terry Wohlers, everybody knows Terry, but I want to introduce you nevertheless. He's head of advisory services and market intelligence of Wohlers Associates, powered by STAM, Additive Manufacturing Center of Excellence, based in Washington, right?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. And Dr. Anna Worsley, you know her because she was on stage already. She's Director of Innovation of Faberex. Anna, good to have you here.
Thank you.
And Dr. Tobias Lam, he's Head of Technology of Cellbricks, based in Berlin, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah, okay. Tobias, first, we had a lot of questions to you already from the audience, so I will start with Kety when it's okay for you.
Okay.
Yeah, Kety, there are a lot of new technologies coming up. We talked about pharmaceuticals. Just go a bit on a bird's eye view, and let's talk about emerging technologies as a whole. Which technologies do you see coming up, and which, from your perspective as editor, most impressive and most important?
Well, thanks a lot for having me here and for your question. Well, I would say that, first of all, emerging technologies are all those technologies that are currently in development, whose applications and potentials are still largely unrealized, and some of them actually intertwine. And in the additive manufacturing industry itself, one can mention, for instance, electronics 3D printing, 3D food printing, pharmaceutical 3D printing, even AI-powered, technologies. So, yeah.
So these are you would focus on. Terry, which one would you focus on? What are the emergent technologies you see very important?
You're talking about additive manufacturing processes for producing drugs, or in general?
I was thinking about the verticals, but maybe you can cover the topic you have in mind as well. So let's first talk about the verticals. Which verticals are coming up?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like a toolbox. You pick up a wrench when you need to turn a bolt head, and you pick up a hammer when you want to nail. And so fortunately for the companies here at Formnext, there's a role for, depending upon the application, you pick out the right tool and you apply it properly. And so, but with that said, some stand out more than others for, say, aerospace and medical devices, metal powder bed fusion, for example. That's, I mean, clearly when you walk around, you see the rocket engine parts and the medical devices and many others. And so that is one that has really captured a lot of interest and a lot of investment around both the machines and the powders. But binder jetting long-term for metals could take off. It's taking some time. I think when they dial it in, the likes of HP, GE, and Höganäs and others, desktop metal, once they fine-tune it, I think it's really got a future in a lot of different application areas. So, but right now it's not quite ready for prime time, so to speak.
Okay, yeah, but as based in US, I think you have a very international view as well. So is it the same? The verticals, are they emerging the same in each part of the world?
Well, of course, the more developed nations like here in Germany and Japan, in Asia, and then of course US are on the forefront of, for example, Nikon with the SLM solutions, they really are made a big commitment to this class of technology that we refer to as 3D printing and additive manufacturing. But the less developed nations, of course, they're behind some of the countries in Africa, for example. But they too are looking at this and looking at ways in which they can benefit of the technology across a lot of different industrial sectors and for different applications. So.
Kety, can you see some differences in, for example, we have a strong footprint here with medical and pharmaceutical. Do you see a country ahead in developing such applications?
Well, when it comes to medical 3D printing, I would say Germany and even Belgium are quite advanced. When it comes to 3D food printing, I would say Israel is a country that hosts, some of the most advanced 3D food printing companies.
Mm-hmm. So it depends on one or single companies,
exactly,
which are very strong in a market. So the company itself will be on the top of
exactly.
Yours.
Yeah.
For example, Israel is very strong in food printing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of Israeli companies have.
Yeah. We have a lot of companies like MeatTech, Redefine Meat.
Yeah.
All of them are coming. Are based in Israel and are expanding across the world, into other regions. So yeah.
What about, one of you mentioned electronics, right? What about the emerging market electronics? We were talking about electronics since some years, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think it has potential. Yeah, but it's
a long potential. It's a long road of potential.
So are you familiar with the technology readiness level, TRL? Like 1 is a concept and then 9 is commercialization. And so there's a lot of steps to get to commercialization. And electronics in general is probably a TRL 3 to 5, maybe 3 to 4 in that range. So there's a lot of work yet to get to the point where they're efficient circuits, for example. But in the meantime,
so it's about costs, right?
Well,
it's not about the technology itself.
It is. No, it is about the technology itself. It is. Yeah, they're inefficient circuits, and they're very, very slow at 3D printing a printed circuit board. So it's slow and not efficient like a conventionally produced electronic circuit. But with that said, in the meantime, sensors that are being produced for aerospace applications, so they are applying the basic technology, but not full circuits as we know them, not yet. In our future, probably not maybe in my lifetime, definitely in yours.
So they are not competitive right now.
Pardon me?
They are not competitive right now.
Yeah, it's emerging and it's developing. It's something to watch, but it's going to take some time for it to really.
When we were talking about food, how serious is dealing with food applications? Is it just shiny, or are there functionality aspects as well?
Well, yeah, maybe you mean going beyond the aesthetic purpose, because most companies right now that specialize in 3D food printing, usually when they debut on this market, they tend to, appeal their customers with the aesthetic purpose of your 3D food printers. But one comes to realize that actually 3D food printing can go beyond this aesthetic purpose to address other specific issues, like for instance, specific diseases like dysphagia. People who suffer from swallowing disorders can actually have their food 3D printed to make it more easy for them to swallow food.
Okay.
Yeah, right now we also have companies like BioFlow that are using their 3D food printers to personalize food, to create food based on one person's DNA, and these can help people to better meet their diet requirements. And also, if we want to go a little bit further and look at the environmental challenges that we currently face right now, one can realize that it's also possible to produce food locally using 3D food printers and produce 3D printed snacks based on waste. It's a bit weird to say that, but companies are working, to produce with ingredients that will have been thrown away otherwise. So,
Okay, it's like doing a Lego game, taking some aspects and putting them together again to create a new one. But the personalized aspect is a good cliffhanger to the medicine and pharmaceutical, because that's all about personalized medicine as well. Anna, in your keynote this morning, we learned a lot about how healthcare can be revolutionized with 3D printed personalized medicine. Why is additive so important to develop this medical products from your perspective? Just maybe you give us a short review about, really short review about your presentation, because not everybody follow this.
Sure, it's really important to get personalized medicine, and that's why we're focusing on that as a company, a startup company. So basically for drugs which are very potent, say an oncology or cancer medication, for example, you really need a very precise drug. Too much and it can cause quite a lot of harm. Too little and you're really not getting that treatment that you need for either, a very horrendous disease or disorder that you might have. So you want the exact dose. And then for patient populations like pediatrics, where at every age a child is different size, obviously every person is different. You might have a very tall person versus a very small person. These people all need different doses. And a lot of the time this is prescribed as a personalized dose for these treatment pathways that need a personalized dose, but you can't manufacture it very easily. So they're not commercially available in a mass manufactured sense. So pharmacists need to break up tablets, prescribe multiple tablets, weigh powders and things like that. And it's not very efficient, it's not very safe for the pharmacist preparing the medication, and it's not nice for the patients themselves. They're not taking the medication, and that's a big problem in healthcare.
Mm-hmm. It's a different kind of personalization, Tobias, you're doing as a startup. You have the big vision to print organs and so to extend and save lives. When you are on a earlier stage of your business, let's say the organ you are printing is not so the question if it's really personalized for one person. You are dealing with the process itself at today, right?
Yes and no at the same time, let's say.
Okay.
So, of course, you start with in vitro applications. So you basically create small tissues and you try to have the smallest functional unit of an organ to see the function of the organ. And then there's the scale-up process. And this is where we are right now to basically get a full-sized organ. To get these smallest functional units, this is lots of biology. Basically, you start with simple cell culture, but simple cell culture is limited by the size and also by the function and also the differentiation. So after some time, the cells lose their capacity and they basically are maybe viable, but they de-differentiate. They don't have their function anymore. With the 3D printing technology, we are able to trigger the cells and to give them in an environment where they can grow and where they can basically see a native environment. So let's say the cells feel like they are in a body of the human. This makes them viable and this makes them also differentiated and they keep their function over a very long time.
And here you could in future do it that way that the feeling of being in a body is feeling of being in the right body, in the one personalized body, right?
Right. So if you think about organ failure and you have to replace an organ for a human body, you can take a donor organ, but you also have to take lots of medicine to basically get immune suppression and so that the tissue is not rejected by the body. With the bioprinting technology, we are able to basically get cells from the patient or pluripotent stem cells that become cells of the patient, meaning that the tissue that you create is in the end the patient's own tissue. So you don't have to use immune suppression afterwards, and you basically, let's say, reconstruct the tissue or the missing tissue from the patient.
But that's a theory right now. It's not proven at the human.
That's true. I mean, we are not the only company or not the only institute that is working on this. Basically, worldwide, there's lots of research going on there because it has so much potential. And there has also been in vivo and preclinical studies, and they look quite well already. The great challenge now is as well that we don't only have one organ, we have so many different organs. So this is basically a huge task to overcome.
And as I learned this morning, you are starting with the liver as a not test organ, but as a first step.
Right. So we basically have done some studies on liver tissue. And for the liver, for example, if the liver fails, it's really hard to get a donor organ and also to replace this by technology. The kidney, for example, you can use dialysis, as I talked before, and this works for quite a long time. But for the liver, it's really hard to get let's say an instrument that is basically detoxifying your blood. And the body itself is always best in that. So having cells in a patch that can basically then detoxify the blood for you and become your own liver or an extension of your liver is, I think, the way to go.
Kety, just when we look at the markets again, and when you hear the pharmaceutical examples and applications, from your perspective, is it a singularity that we have so much in Germany? You mentioned already Belgium, but what Terry, you can hear with me the question, because what is in US? I think there are the big pharmaceutical companies are located in US. They should be very strong in that field, right?
Yeah, this should be, but I think that they are also in their activity quite slowed down by a couple of challenges they face. Maybe Anna will be able to share, her point of view on the UK market, for instance. But right now, if you want to look at, if we want to have like a general view of the market, we come to realize that most pharmaceutical 3D printing companies have to address, challenges in terms of legislation, in terms of production, in terms of cost as well. Legislation varies from one country to another. In the US, it's quite different from what's happening in the UK, for instance. And if you want to look at the production stage, for instance, we'll realize that the pharmaceutical industry has generated massive amount of money based on mass production of drugs. And 3D printing brings the advantages of personalized drugs with specific defined printing parameters, but it does not always answer the mass customization question. And this can, be a challenge when we want to scale, production of the market. Don't know if Anna will agree with me on that.
Yeah, so we are finding that like pharmaceutical companies are now starting to get interested, but 3 years ago they weren't interested at all.
Yeah.
And they did, they might have dabbled in it, but they moved on. Now we're finding large international companies coming to us, trying to get involved, not quite sure how to sometimes. And that's why they're getting us to do formulation development, for example. So we are seeing definitely a boom at the moment across the world. The EU is definitely kind of a hub for pharmaceutical 3D printing, way more so than the UK, actually. Even though we're a UK company, we're more active in the EU, in France and Spain, in Germany, the Netherlands, for example. And we're only just seeing the equal of that in the US. So we're now getting more interested in the US. More companies and hospitals are coming to us to find out how to get involved, and that's very exciting.
And then, if I may add, when it comes to cost now, usually when we look at the way additive manufacturing is used across other applications, one thing remains quite unchanged is that additive manufacturing is great to deliver a customized end product, but at the end, in the end, this product remains quite expensive, and the pharmaceutical 3D printing is no exception to that reality. So, don't know if Terry will agree with me or has a different point of view here or not.
In the U.S.?
Yeah.
You mean the cost structure?
I mean the challenges that pharmaceutical 3D printing companies have to address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one nice thing about the U.S., of course, maybe I'm biased, but hospitals and other organizations in the healthcare field are open to new ideas and trying new things. So when Materialize did a study a few years ago, back then, I think it was maybe 4 years ago, more than 100 hospitals in the U.S. already had 3D printing facilities. Now, this is for modeling applications like this lighting design that we see in the back and those kinds of things, not drugs or implants, but they are beginning to look at ways in which they can bring it in-house and use it. And I think the same is true with the printing of medicines too. I think we'll see that. And I think the pharmacies will be the second. We talked about this earlier. I think because most patients in the U.S. go to pharmacies to pick up their prescription, and so that's the supply chain structure, and they will be, I think, somehow needed to be involved.
Yeah, exactly. We do see that it's different for every single country. So
Right.
whenever we have a new collaboration in a different country, we've got to be very careful with how we advise. And usually it's a learning process for us as well, because regulation is different for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, in Germany, we have the situation that we have a lack of some medicine in our pharmaceuticals and apothecaries. They must, look where to get some medicines. That would be that would be totally help if everybody would have a 3D printer and he could print with several ingredients the personalized medicine very decentralized, right?
Yeah, don't you think if we fast forward 20 or 30 years, that'll be the standard of care? That'll be on site, specific for the patient. I mean, why not? It just takes time. It takes about a human generation for these things to really gain traction.
I wonder why we are not more into the market, more into the development. Is it the fear of intellectual property losing their property because the recipe is very unique or something, that the companies are very reluctant because of this? Or is it the technology which is too complicated right now?
Or maybe.
So we actually find regulation is the main hurdle for people. A few years ago, obviously, it was probably more the technology, there being no GMP-ready pharmaceutical 3D printers. Now there's a number on the market. We obviously have two that there are competitors. So it's really the regulation slowing the field down. We are seeing a bit of movement there. Like I mentioned in my presentation, the FDA, the EMA, the MHRA, they're all writing legislation at the moment to better fit point-of-care manufacturing, which 3D printing would fit under for personalized medicine. But it needs to be published to really give confidence for pharmacists. So hopefully next year we'll have some clarity. They are very vocal about their progress, which is nice to hear. And it's great to hear that they're working on it actively.
And that will be an international recognized regulation.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously something different for England versus the UK versus the EMA in the EU, and obviously different again for the FDA in America. But what we have found out through our different channels is that they do all want to kind of do this, implement the same thing. They're all talking to each other kind of unofficially as well. So.
Let's once again dive a bit deeper into the technology of the 3D printers. You said you have already some, and sorry, they are working quite well. What about your technology? You are working in a laboratory, right?
Yes, true. So we use DLP-based printing, so DLP projectors that can then print like whole layers at once. The technology itself is very advanced. What's basically not really new for bioprinting, but basically a challenge is the complexity of the process. So if you think about the 3D printing of plastics and you have resins, you can use very intense UV light, you can have initiator in there, you can basically have all kinds of additives in the ink to make it work perfectly. If you think about cells, they are picky. They just die off if you fail in some of these challenges or parameters. So the process needs to be controlled quite well and also engineered quite well because we have cells in the bioink while we print. So they are exposed to the complete printing procedure. But this is already done, and we have these printers in-house, and the cells survive no matter which cell type. If you have very robust cell lines, they survive. If you have very crucial pluripotent stem cells or stem cells that usually tend to die off quite fast, they can be planted without any issues and can be produced into hydrogels and 3D structures. The challenge right now is to scale this up because if you think about a full-sized organ, then you need also the scale. So this is basically what we are onto right now.
And then I think you will face, or you are facing, the regulatory aspects. You have to do a lot of documentation work, right? You both, I think.
So it's, for pharmaceutical 3D printing, it's not so bad, to be honest. It does fit under compounding regulation already. The problem is that if you want to publish a scientific publication, you still need regulatory approval. And we always advise to speak to your regulatory bodies as well, because obviously it's a very new technology. So you want to tell them that you exist if you want to implement it for your patients. Otherwise, it can be a bit... I don't want to say dangerous, because obviously compounding pharmacists are all specialists. They know what they're doing. But it's always important to tell the regulators what you're doing.
If I could offer this, one encouraging thing about the regulatory part of this is that organizations like the FDA in the United States are becoming quite educated. They have experts now that are going to conferences. They're probably here this week. But last week we had ICAM, which is an international conference on additive manufacturing in Washington, D.C. And I know of at least 3 people that I saw from the FDA there, and some that I've known for years. So they're really becoming educated into what we're talking about here. That way you don't have to go there and explain the basics to what 3D printing is when you're talking, communicating with them. So that's encouraging to see that development.
And do we need more software engineers to get into our industry? Because something like documentation could be very useful. You already mentioned AI. So do we need more software engineers who bring us new technology in terms of that we do not have so much work on to do on documentation, or to steer all the processes in the right...
Well, I can give you my 2 cents, and they can...
yeah.
But yeah, they're currently very expensive and hard to find. So yeah, I think we need more talent for sure.
But if I may, I wouldn't only mention legislation. I will also focus on maybe educating the end user, because in the end, the end user is the one, the end user of the technology is the one who will actually buy that technology. And I think that for the end user, the key focus is also on the cost consideration, because they have been, trained, and they have been using conventional manufacturing processes for so long. Now there is this fear of trying something new. And this fear actually somehow, slows down this adoption of the technology. So I will focus also on educating that specific end user.
Maybe we come back to that aspect later, because that has to do, for me, something with marketing and with fear of new technology.
Yeah, correct.
Let me stick a little longer to the usefulness AI and software can be for growing our business, because I think that when we spend too much time in questions of documentations, of regulation, of automation of our processes, and there is software, one of the key factors, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree.
Be good to hear from.
Yeah, it's definitely extremely important. That's one of the important things for pharmaceutical 3D printing, because that's the thing that's going to choose the dose. Obviously, you want to put the dose in, and you want it to print exactly. You can't have too much variation, and ideally, you don't want any variation. And that is obviously down to the hardware as well. But the software is extremely important. For accuracy, it's extremely important for auditing, to make sure that everything can be tracked for the regulatory authorities. Extremely
correct, and in that way that it's not altered, that it's not being manipulated.
Yep. So what we have actually is kind of R&D mode and clinical mode in our software. So in the R&D mode, you can just you have complete freedom to 3D print whatever you want. If you want to make a smiley face or any shape or any formulation that you're developing, you can. But then in clinical mode, you can only print the validated formulations and the validated protocols. So the pharmacist can only choose the dose depending on the prescription, and that's it. And you really do need that control.
Do you have similar solutions?
Yes, actually the same applies to our systems. So you have the printing mode where you actually can only print tissues that have already been validated. This is usually done, for example, with tumor tissues that are used for CAR T cells therapy development, because these tissues are very well defined, the cells are characterized, and then you basically aim for producing the same tissue over and over again to have many samples for your application in lab. But if you think about an organ or any tissue that you want to develop, then of course you need complete design freedom first. And as long as you stay in the research environment, that's totally fine. But then as soon as you think about preclinical or even then clinical studies, then of course this needs to be regulated and basically be switched to a fully regulated and well-documented environment. To me, software is, of course, documentation is very important, but I think the technical aspects of the bioprinting processes, or in general, the 3D printing processes, there's much potential for artificial intelligence because there's so many parameters you can tweak. There's so many inputs you have, not only physical, but also virtual. And then the process itself and so many sensors, temperature sensors, humidity, whatever. And you can combine all this together and you can create a machine that basically learns from the inputs the operator gives. And this is what we are implementing in our machines because it is super complex. So when you have one process done, you're happy. You change just a small thing like another cell type, and then it could come out a complete different approach or whatever it can come out.
That's a bridge for me to simulation. So nowadays you want to simulate a process before you invest a lot of high-cost materials and a lot of time and effort. And so you want to simulate. And there again, you need the software and the combination of the software and software like AI. So my question is, how mature do you think the software aspect in that what we are doing here, or we are talking about, let's say, pharmaceutical aspects? How mature is it? And you mentioned they are very cost-intensive software engineers, but is it really a lack, or is it just growing as fast as it has to with a hardware and other aspects?
So we've reached a point now that we do have software that can be used clinically, which we're very proud of, obviously, and we're working with pharma companies to get it implemented, hospitals as well, to get it implemented into their workflows. Obviously, just a few years ago, we didn't have anything, but now ourselves and our competitors all have highly developed software for, especially designed for use in clinics. So I think in the pharmacy field for 3D printing, we are there with the software.
Okay, so that is not the crucial point for growing.
Well, obviously, it could be improved with AI developments and things like that, depending on how that can, that develops.
What do you think, Kety? We didn't talk about India. India is a very strong nation in pharmaceuticals as well, and that would be it would be a good place for introducing such new technologies as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And they have a lot of software engineers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. But I don't know how far the Indian market is advanced, so I can't really give a specific point of view on that. But maybe, Terry, do you have any insights into the Indian market?
Somewhat. Places like Bangalore would be a good place to consider introducing some of these new ideas and tapping the talent that is there, because they do have a lot of really world-class talent.
Yeah, so maybe we find somebody who is more deep into the Indian market. We had some Chinese guests today here at stage. Maybe we will find some from India as well. Yeah. So we have some questions from our audience. I don't want to forget them, because we are here in a kind of a tunnel when we are discussing here our topics, and you are outside there here at the booth. You can ask your questions with the Slido, and outside there in the live stream you have the Slido tool possibility as well. So let me check our questions. So I have for Fabrics, that's for you. Can you give an overview of the pathway you fellows took to get your machine GMP certified, Anna?
So to get GMP certification, you don't actually need official certification, which was a bit confusing, obviously, when initially developing the printer. So you can use the printer right now in hospital workflows, and that's completely fine. We have approached regulatory authorities, FDA, MHRA, EMA, for example, and they've all said that we need to wait for this new point of care legislation to do anything further. But in terms of GMP, as long as you're using things like stainless steel, glass, etc. The correct materials. It's very easily cleaned. So the print heads that we use can easily be taken apart to clean. They're exchangeable, so you can take it off and replace it with a new one very easily. So you can have continuous printing. So there's different things to keep in mind when developing a GMP 3D printer, but you don't actually need official certification for it.
What is, in your viewpoint, the roadmap to hospitals deploying 3D printed medicines and organs at point of care?
For organs?
I don't know.
Great question.
A long time. But there's another question for you. You may answer. For the breast reconstruction, how will breast implant be attached to the patient's arteries for vascularization?
Yes. So for the breast tissue, it's more or less like a sponge, or you can think of it like a sponge. And you don't need to have like specific vascular structures attached to each other, but they will grow into this tissue if you basically are able to produce the environment the blood vessels need. So when we bioprint the breast, then it's adipose stem cells in there, but there's also endothelial cells that are basically the basics and the sprouts for vascular structures that form by themselves.
Mm-hmm. And on immunosuppression, would it be a strategy to first print organs that do not depend so much on perfusion, for example, cornea, skin?
Yes, definitely. So we have done some studies on cartilage, which doesn't heavily depend on vascularization. And these cells basically are triggered then by deformation or by if they are in the body and they get put weight on it. Immunosuppression is a big topic, of course, for therapeutic application in general. And if you are able to take the patient's own cells, then this is always good and a way to go. But as I said before, they are limited. So if you need large amounts of cells, then you need to find an alternative. And this could be readily available iPSC cell lines that are basically suitable for most of the world's population. And there's done research on there. We don't do this by ourselves, but there's institutes that basically research these iPSC cell lines to be applied in therapeutic applications.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So if you have additional questions outside, I hope we answered every question you had still this point. But use the tool and we will have a look at it later. And we will find you at the exhibition. I think you are here. It's not. I hope not your only day.
No.
Kety, what are you busy doing here at Formnext, upcoming today or upcoming days?
Well, in the upcoming days and even today, I'll be busy, conducting, interviews, discussing with industry insiders to know the key capabilities of their technology, how they have been able to advance compared to last year, and also new applications. I will also be discussing new collaboration opportunities with EM companies. I would like to work with 3D Adapt Media and also meet, our community here outside. So yeah, that's it.
Terry, what is your job besides being here with me on stage? What do you do the next days?
Yeah, well, first I want to congratulate Masago for this event. It was announced this morning that it's now bigger than 2019.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's great. It's one of my very favorite weeks of the year to come here. I'm like a little kid in a candy store. It's just, it's a great place to be. So many friends, you meet new people. For 35 years, Wohlers Associates was small. I guess it still is, but it was acquired 2 years ago. Before then, we never had a booth. We just would roam be a visitor. And now we have a booth, a stand, and it's pretty good size. It's on this floor.
You are growing like the market. I saw your graph online where the AM market is growing like a hockey stick.
Yeah.
So it's really impressive from the market, and that's the same. I think you're doing as your company the growth range.
Yeah, we're trying to stay pace. We're probably growing a little faster than that because, we're getting lots of investment from ASTM International, which acquired Wohlers Associates 2 years ago. It was announced at this event. And we had a big party, and we had the top management from Masago there. It was a great evening. So meeting people morning, day, and night. I mean, meetings, and I never thought I'd like to work on the other side of the booth. As a visitor, I would go and I wouldn't want to do that job on the other side, but it's actually a lot of fun. You know, it's fun having people come up and,
Yeah, right.
you know, I just have so much, I feel lucky.
It's like Christmas.
Lucky to be here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Anna, what are you doing besides giving presentations on stage?
So unfortunately, we don't have a stand this year, but I am wandering around with our head of engineering. So I'll be talking to some people who are also in the kind of the bioengineering or pharma kind of fields. I know there's a few stands that we're interested in for collaborations. So it's mainly for kind of collaborations today.
Okay, thank you. Tobias, what are you going home to Berlin today, or do you decide to stay a
late
bit
this
longer?
evening. Late this evening,
Okay,
but I will be here the whole day. Unfortunately, yes. But I have some meetings coming up, but I also have some free spots. And as you mentioned, regulatories. I hope that maybe some people are here that are connected to regulatory, and I'd love to talk to those people. And maybe we also find the one or other software engineer because we are very interested in that.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All having you on stage. Yeah, dear audience, I would rather prefer a 3D printed chocolate or something than your organs, if I can choose. But maybe the one or the other day, I will be lucky if you succeed in your efforts here on stage and especially back in the laboratories and in the offices. So. Thank you all for being with us here on stage, here the audience in the booth, and you outside at the live streams. We will have a short break here at the booth, but we will be back on time on 2:15 with our program this evening. There we will have some very interesting startups again here on the booth, and some of them or all of them, they won a prize, and so make sure to come and join us then again. For now, thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you.